This conference will now be recorded.
In yesterday's session, we were discussing about Docker file instructions like env, arg, label, workdir, like this. We were discussing. We already discussed other instructions like from maintainer, copy, add, run, cmd, entry point. We have few more instructions left. One is user, another one is expose, volume, like this. We have some other instructions. So what is this user? What is this user instructions, right? That user instruction, using user instruction, we can set an user as in which user your container process should start. This user instruction using, we can set an user for the image or container also. So the process will be started as that user, whatever user we have set. It is similar to switching the user, guys, like the way we switch the user, right? Like in the Linux, if you want to change the user, right, something like this we will give in the Linux, right? Similarly, using this instruction, I can set an user as a which user the commands or the process should start in the image or container. So if I don't set any user, as a which user by default the commands or the process will be started. In Docker file, I have not set any user. As a which user the commands or process will start by default. That will be started as a root user, root user of the container, root user of the container. If required, can I create an user and can I set the user for my image and container? Yes, we can set an user, we can create an user and we can set the user for image or container, so that does that process, does the container or process, will it start as that user, whatever user I have set using this user instruction? Yes, it will start the container as that user. If you see, we already have a lot of containers. If we see, already we have a lot of containers. We already have a lot of containers. If you see, I created few containers here. If we go inside the container and if you see, if I go inside the container and if you see, as a which user the currently the process is running, as a which user the process is running, the container process as a root user. If we want, right, we can create a user and we can set the user also using Docker file. But let's say in my Docker file I have set like this user, just to give an example, non-root, just username itself is non-root, or if I can say username something like this Tomcat, does it mean this will create a user and switch the user? Does it mean it will create a user and switch the user? No. It won't create a user. That user should be part of the image. So how can I create a user before I set this user instruction? In a Docker file, how can I do that? We can use user add only, but how to do that? How to create a user in the image? What instruction you will use to do that user add? CMD will start the process. Does the my process itself is this adding the user in the container? No, right? So which user? Someone is saying arg. It is not arg. Can I do something like this? Run user add that username. Then once this is done, can I do something like this so that all the subsequent commands? Guys, arg user. Arg is different. Arg is if you want to pass it as an argument. Let's say if I say arg user, what it does? You guys are not going through the recordings. I can clearly understand now. You guys are might be not attending, or you guys are not going through the recordings also. I can clearly understand now. So you are still not clear what is what. Now, if I want to do this, I can create something like this user add username. But if I don't want to hard code this, if I don't want to hard code this, if I want to pass this username as a runtime, then you can use argument. Then you can use an argument. I want to create an user. I want to create a user. So as I already told, this will not create the user. It will not create the user. This will not create the user. How to create the user in the image? Or normally you will use this user add command. If I want to do that image creation, while creating an image, I want to have this user in the image. Do I need to do using run command? Yes. Now, people are saying argument. Why argument? What is the use of argument? Yesterday itself I told. If you want to parameterize your Docker build, you can use arguments. But if I say, now people are saying arg user equals to tomcat. If I say like this, is it going to create a user? Is it going to create a user? No. But if required, can I do this like this? If required, can I do like this? So that is how you can do run. You can use run to do that. Something like this. If you don't want hard code, use an argument concept. Something like this you can do. Now, if you see some examples, let me show you. Let me show you some other images. That's why I keep saying attend all the classes, go through the recordings, practice multiple times. Because when I am explaining in the class, you may feel this is very simple. So Docker is very simple, or AWS is very simple, or Jenkins is also very simple when we are discussing. But down the line, after 2 3 days, if I ask questions, you may not able to answer. After 1 month, if I ask, you may ask, sir, what is Docker? Did you cover Docker? Something like this, you will say. That is how it is if you don't attend, if you don't practice. That's why we are saying key from the beginning. And again, people are in weekend mood today. At least weekdays, I see at least 60 people, 65 people. Today, again, 20 people dropped. They want to enjoy the weekend. They don't want any class on the weekend. So that's why they are not at all joining in weekend. Guys, I am a working professional from last 13 years. I do work every day 15 hours in my office. Minimum 12 hours my office work will be there. Sometimes it will go 15 hours, and I am managing other things also. So if you feel I want weekend to be, I don't want weekend classes, I don't want to sit and practice, you will be in the same position. If you want growth, whether you are working employee, whether you are still fresher, if you want to be succeed something, if you want growth in your career, you need to do some hard work, guys. There is no exceptional, there is no shortcuts. People are already dropped today, only 40 people. I can't do anything with this kind of attitude. Let's discuss this. Let me show the image. Let me show one image, like Jenkins image. Now, this is one of the image, Jenkins image. This is the Docker file of Jenkins. This is the Docker file of Jenkins. Just to show this, I'm opening. So this is the Docker file used to create a Jenkins image. So what base image they are using? Java 8 image. On top of Java JDK 8, are they installing required softwares like this using run instruction like install git curl? So they are installing git curl, and why they are doing this one? Because they have updated package manager. All unnecessary packages will be part of this apt list folder, so they don't want that image to be very huge in size. So they installed curl git, and when we execute this command, right, all unnecessary package details will be part of this folder. So they don't want all these things. They have executed this one. Now if you see, are they using arguments concept here, like variables, user, group, like this? If you see, are these arguments are used within the Docker file also like this? When they are setting environment variable, they are saying agent port. Is this agent port is defined as argument? But is it mandatory to do like this? Or instead of this, can I hard code here like that 50,000? Instead of dollar this agent port, can I hard code also that 50,000 if required? Yes. Now if you see, using run instruction, what they are doing here, guys? What this commands does? What this command does? They're creating one group, -g, group id group. But where these are coming from, where these are coming, or these are defined as an arguments here, variables, kind of a variables here. So are they creating a group called Jenkins with the group id 1000? Group called Jenkins with group id 1000? Yes. What is this symbol? This backward slash symbol is escaping character. Escaping character. Next line. So instead of continuing in the same line, for better readability, they are using this forwards, backward slash escaping character. Next line. So is this command also belongs to same run instruction? They are using for better readability. They are using escaping character. Next line. So double ampersand. What this command is doing? User add -d, -u, -g. All these are user add commands. User add options. Are they creating a user with a username called Jenkins? They're adding that user to, this group, with the group, right? And home directory. They're not creating a separate home directory. So what is the home directory for this Jenkins user? Are they setting this where Jenkins home as a home directory? Instead of /home/Jenkins, this is the home directory for Jenkins user. And what is this? They are giving access to the bash shell. They are giving access to the bash shell. So using this run instruction, did they created user group and did they add that user to that group here? So once this is done, after that they are making some changes again, like they are creating directory like this. And if you see, they are downloading some softwares. And if you see, are they downloading Jenkins var file using run instruction while creating an image? While creating an image, are they downloading Jenkins var file, jenkins.var file? Are they downloading into this folder, user share Jenkins var folder using run instruction? And are they changing the ownership? Are they changing the ownership to that Jenkins home directory to this user share Jenkins where they have downloaded the Jenkins var file to this folder also, user share Jenkins. They are changing the ownership to Jenkins user. And after that, they are doing something like this environment user. If you see what this command is going to do, user $user, what this command is going to do, user $user, is it switching the user now to the Jenkins? Now, whatever commands we have after this, maybe entry point command or a run command or cmd command, now this command or this process will be executed as a which user? Because this entry point run cmd whatever it is there after this instruction, will be executed as a whatever user we switched. So does this entry point will be executed as a Jenkins user, which means does Jenkins process will be started as a Jenkins user? Does Jenkins process will be started as a Jenkins user? Yes. So this way, if required, can I create a non-root user in the image and can I run my process as a non-root user instead of root user? So we can do like this. Now, for any other application also, not only this application, for any other application also, let's consider this application. Let's consider this application. This is one of the best security practices, guys. Is it recommended to run your container process as a root process? I mean to say root user. Is it recommended to run your container process as a root user? No. Why it is not recommended? Root user. Does root user have all the privileges in the container also? Yes. If required, if someone get into the container, someone hacked your system, your Docker socket, and someone get inside your container and your container is running as a root user. If required, can they install required softwares from package managers because that is running as a root? Root has access to the package manager. Can they install some softwares like any software which they want to install in the container? And will they able to do anything because it is running as a root user? If they hack into your container, your system. But if same container is running as a non-root user, normal user, does this apt install will work as a non-root user or yum install will work as a non-root user? Will they able to do something as a non-root user? No. So which means this is one of the best practices needs to be followed also. Best practices needs to be followed while creating container images. So what is that? Try to run your container process as a non-root user, not as a root user. Now, if you take this Docker file, now I have not created any user, I have not switched any user. As a which user this container process will be started? Root user. But if I don't want that to happen, if required, can I create a user like this in the Docker file? The way I have like this. If required, can I create a user like this in the Docker file? Maybe normal user. That username can be anything. Can I do something like this? So if I don't want to define variable, I can hard code. Maybe group name, something like this. Username can be anything. That username can be something like this. anything. This is group name. I can add a username also like this. If I don't want to do like this, so the username is also something like this. Username is this, a user is also this, like this, and a group id like this, whatever group id I created. Now this home directory, if I want to set, can I set this as a home directory if required, or any other directory? If required, can I set this as a home directory for that user like this? Then if required, can I change the ownership for that directory? Run like this, ch own, you know all these things, right? I no need to explain. Changing the direct permissions of that, something like this. So I want to change ownership to this user, something like this, and this is something like this, and for this directory I can use like this also. This also can be used like this if required, or you can hard code also, something like this. Now this is not required. Now once this is done, can I do something like this here? User that, something like this. Now does this process will be started as a which user now? Does this process will be started as a root or this user? Something like this we can do if required. But as I already told, if I just use user and username without creating or without having that user in the image in the previous layers, does this work? No. So can I do something like this before switching the user if that user is not part of the image or container? I mean to say in the image or base image. Yes. So this is one of the best security practice. Even though you go inside the container, now as a which user I will land inside the container process? This one. So here, can I execute some root operations like apt install if I want to do something inside the container like this? Will it work? No, it won't work because it's a normal user. So is everyone clear? What is the use of user instruction? Why user? What is this user instruction? Is everyone clear? Now we have another instruction called expose. Another instruction called expose. What is this expose? Most of the times you see expose something like this, 8080, expose 3000, something like this, expose 27017, like this you see. What is this expose? If you see something like this docker file also, are they using this expose instruction saying that expose 8080 and expose 50,000? What is this expose instruction? So is it like you are opening a port or firewall, or is it like you are setting the port for your container? No, it is not like that. You are not opening kind of a port or firewall in the container. You no need to do that also. It is not a security group also for the container. There is no security group concept for container. Do you have a security group concept kind of a in container in the image? No, that is for your system, your server. Your server has a firewall, that security group. So this is not like you are opening a port or you are opening a firewall. It is not like you are setting the port also. This is purely for documentation purpose, which indicates, this expose indicates on which port the process might run, on which port that process will listen. Suppose I am creating one image. I am creating one image like this. Let's consider I am creating one image like this, and I am publishing that image. I am publishing that image. The consumer, the guy who is going to use this image, they want to deploy this image, but will they able to understand on which port this image, this process is going to be running? If I do like this, they'll not understand on which port. But in that case, do they need to go inside the container? Do they need to go inside the container and first go inside that container? You create a container first. You create a container first. You go inside the container. Then I need to execute this command, something like this. Then I can see on what are the ports are being used in that container and which port that process is running. I can identify. Let's consider you don't have this one also. You don't have netstat package, netstat library, and that container doesn't have a permissions to install libraries also. Will you able to identify on which port your process is going to be created or running? No. But if I am creating an image, I may know. If I am creating an image and I am creating a container, I will know. But I created image and you are going to deploy that image or use that image. Will you understand on which port that code or that application will run? No. So I can use some instruction like this, expose that port, something like this. Now, if I have used it like this, when you inspect the image also, wherever you inspect the image, will I able to see on which port this process is going to be exposed? If I inspect the image also, will I able to see on which port that is going to be exposed? Let me show you. Now, if I inspect this image, if I inspect this image, now can I see something like this? Exposed ports. But how come that is showing exposed ports 8080? Did I set that in my Docker file? I am referring a different code, not this one. In this code, in this Docker file, did I set that? In this Docker file, did I set that expose? No. But from where it is coming? From where it is coming? From the base image. From the base image, right? Don't get confused. Suppose if I say something like this, if I say something like this, now this is my Docker file. Now if I say something like this, expose 1990, does it mean your Tomcat process is going to start on 1990? If I say something like this, does it mean your Tomcat process is going to start on 1990? No. Don't consider you can change the port like this. So by default, on which port Tomcat is going to be running? 8080. But if I say here like expose 1990, does it mean your Tomcat process, your Tomcat will run on 1990 port? No. If I really want to change the port, if I really want to change the port of Tomcat, where I need to change, in which file I need to change? If I really want to change my Tomcat process port, in which file I need to change? Yes, you have done all these things. In which file? I am asking file. Forget about Docker. In Tomcat, which file I need to change? In the server.xml. In the server.xml. Now, if I really want to change port, I don't want this Tomcat to be running on 8080. I want to really change on 1990. So if I do like this, it won't work. Then can I update the server.xml file? Can I update the configuration also if required? Now, how can I do that? How can I do that? That is part of this image. So where, from the base image, where exactly Tomcat is there? What is the Tomcat environment in the base image? In which folder they have Tomcat in the base image? You can understand from the official document. From the official document, let me show you. So this is Tomcat image. What is Tomcat? They are saying how to use this image. They are saying the default Tomcat environment. The default Tomcat environment in the image. They are saying Catalina home is this one. They're saying Catalina home is this one, which means within that image, is this the Tomcat home directory? So within this home directory, within that home directory, will I have a folder like this also? Conf folder server.xml. Now, if I really want to tweak this one, can I tweak? I am taking that base image. If I want to customize this one, can I tweak here using some instructions? What can you do? If you really want to do some changes in this server.xml from the base image, whatever you are getting, how to do here? If required, can I use copy instruction, which means I will have my own server.xml in my build context. I will have my own server.xml in my build context. Can I replace that server.xml with this directory server.xml? So I will have my own server.xml. Can I modify as per my requirement? And can I replace like this? In my build context, I will have a server.xml like this. I will update whatever I want to update. Can I copy that to this location? Which means, is this will be replaced with your own server.xml changes? With changes? Yes. If you really modified this on 1990 in this server.xml, then can I say something like this, expose 1990? Does it make sense now? If I really updated port number in this server.xml, yes. But if I just say something like this, if I just say something like this, does it mean is it container port is going to be changed? No. So this is purely for a documentation purpose. This is purely for a documentation purpose, guys. Don't think you are opening some port, you are opening some firewall. Don't consider like this. Okay. So that does anyone can understand if they inspect the image on which port that process is going to run? If I have that instruction, yes. One more question here. Do I really need to change the ports of my images? So we just discussed now that use case, but do I really need to change the port of the image containers? Not required. Because can I have n number of containers on same port? 8080 port. Can I have a 10 containers also? Yes. So you don't need to change. I have just given that use case just to make you understand this is just for a documentation purpose. Okay. Is everyone clear what is the use of expose? It will little bit confuse. You may think you are opening or you are setting the port. It is not true. It is just for a kind of a documentation purpose. Okay. That is expose. Now we have a one more instruction called value. What is this value? What is this value? Value is nothing but mount points. Mount points. So as we already discussed, whenever your container is deleted, whatever changes, whatever files has been generated in your container file system, if your container is deleted and again recreated, do you have those data? Will you have the data that changes in the new container? No. So containers can be deleted and recreated for many reasons, but if you lost the data, is it acceptable? Containers can be deleted, recreated, but you lost the data. Is it acceptable? No, right? So how to retain the data? How to retain the data or how to retain the state of your container? Data or state, both are same. So how to retain the data or state of container? Using values. Using values. So values we will use in a different way, but let me explain. What does it mean here? Now, if you see this image, Jenkins image only, let me show you. This is the Docker file of Jenkins. This is the Docker file of Jenkins. Now they are setting Jenkins home directory as which directory? They are saying env Jenkins home. Is this considered as a Jenkins home directory? Instead of varlib Jenkins, does this will be considered as a Jenkins home directory because of this environment variable? Instead of varlib Jenkins, this is the environment variable they are setting as like this. So if you create a container out of this image, this is Jenkins image. So does all Jenkins related files like your workspace, your global tools, your plugins, does everything will be part of this working directory, home directory? Yes. But you are running this as a container. If the container is deleted and recreated, again, will it be like again new Jenkins without any jobs, any plugins, any history? Again, it is like a new Jenkins only, because it is going to delete your container file system. So if you see what they are doing with this directory, are they using something like this? Value, that directory name, value, that directory name. So this is what it is going to do actually with the value. Value, this directory name they're saying, what exactly it is going to do? It is basically a mount point. Something like this, it will happen. Now this is your server, let's say. This is your server, Docker server, let's say. You created a container. So within the container, just to give an example, I am taking that Jenkins image. Within this container, does Jenkins is maintaining all the data here? That is Jenkins working directory within the container. Yes. Now, if the container is deleted, is it going to delete? I mean to say that the complete file system is also deleted. Now, if you recreate a container again, does this will be again empty, like again kind of a fresh Jenkins? Yes. So since they have used the value, slash var slash lib slash Jenkins, sorry, not var slash Jenkins underscore home. Since they have done like this, what Docker is going to do basically, it is going to mount with some anonymous value in the server, which means in this server, this is my server, right? This is my server with some directory in the server, with some directory in the host, unnamed value or anonymous value, we call it. With unnamed value or anonymous value, this directory is going to be mounted from your server. One directory, one unnamed storage, one unnamed value will be mounted with this directory. It is mount point. So since it's a mount point, whatever data is getting written into this container directory, will it be actually stored in this directory, in this storage? Since it's a mount point, it is not a backup. Volumes or mounts is different, backups are different. You are not taking a backup, you are mounting, which means is this directory will be actually using this storage, so all your files will be part of this location. Yes. So even though your container is deleted, do you still have that data in this storage? Yes. But this is unnamed value. It is not a named value. Unnamed value, anonymous value. But I don't have any name for that. Will I able to know for what was the value earlier it was used? No. You will have data, but you don't know where, in which volume it is there, but it will maintain. So that is what it is actually going to do. So there is different way of using volumes that we will discuss in a separate class. There is a separate class where we will discuss values. In this section, we are going to use kind of a named volumes. We will give a name for this volume. We will give a name for this volume, then we will mount with this directory while creating a container. Even though you are not doing, but because of this instruction in a Docker file, you are not using volumes while creating a container, but because of this instruction in a Docker file, does Docker will maintain the data of this directory somewhere in the system, but we don't know where. It will maintain, but we don't know where, which value. We call it as an anonymous value. We call it as an anonymous value. But there is a different way of using values. We will discuss that later. Is everyone clear what is the use of this volume instruction? This is just going to mount with some directory in the server. Some directory, we call it as an anonymous value. So value, actual values we will discuss in a separate class. Is everyone clear? All these instructions we discussed almost 4 days. What is what, why, all these things. Now let's try to understand few Docker files now. Let's try to understand few Docker files now. We already Dockerized Python based, Node.js based application. We Dockerized Java based web application. We already Dockerized Node.js based web application. Now let me show you. I'll Dockerize this application. This is again Java based application only, but Spring Boot framework has been used by the developers. Again, what is Spring Boot? It is nothing to do with the DevOps, but at least you should have an idea. What is Spring Boot? Anyone has any idea? If you are from Java background, development background, this is nothing to do with the DevOps. Any idea? What is Spring Boot? It's a popular Java. It's a popular framework to develop Java based applications. That application can be microservice also. That applications can be microservices also. It's a very popular framework to develop Java based application. What is the advantage of this Spring Boot framework? When it comes to development perspective, what is the advantage of Spring Boot framework? It is it is basically taking complexity out of the developers, which means using the Spring Boot framework, they can quickly develop the applications. They're taking kind of a complexity out of the developers. Within quick time, they can start writing the applications using the Spring Boot framework. And also, if you see, this is generating a jar file actually. This is generating a jar file, standalone jar file, but it is not a standalone application. It's a web application. It's a web application. This is generating a jar file, but actually this is not a standalone application. It's a web application. So that Spring Boot framework will have a embedded Tomcat. What is the meaning of embedded Tomcat? The Spring Boot framework will have an embedded Tomcat. It is going to generate a jar file only, but it will have an embedded Tomcat, which means within that jar file, do we have a Tomcat embedded within that jar file itself? Do we have a Tomcat embedded? Yes. Which means they will have a built-in Tomcat within that Spring Boot itself. So even though this is generating a jar file, if I run that jar file, also, even though it is generating a jar file, if I run that jar file like this, does your application will be up and running in the embedded Tomcat, which means within the Tomcat, does this application will be up and running? Yes. So that is the power of Spring Boot, which means, do I really need to have Tomcat from outside? Which means, do I need to use external Tomcat? Do I need to install my own Tomcat to run the application which is developed using Spring Boot? No. So this jar file itself has Tomcat. So if I execute like this, java-jar this app.jar, which means does Tomcat will be started and my application will be running within that? Yes. So that is the power of Spring Boot. But it is nothing to do with the DevOps. Now, the developers are using Spring Boot framework. If you see their dependencies, are they using something related to Spring Boot libraries? They're using Spring Boot dependencies. The developers are using Spring Boot dependencies here. They're using Spring Boot starter web, some dependency like this. So it's a web application. Not standalone application. So because of the Spring Boot dependencies, does that jar file, whatever jar file is getting generated, will it have an embedded application software like Tomcat? Yes. Now this will generate a jar file, but it's a web application. If you see the Docker file, even though it's a web application, am I using Tomcat as a base here? Even though that's a web application, am I using Tomcat as a base here? If you see, am I using Tomcat as a base here? No. I am using Java as a base. On top of that, am I copying that jar file? Whatever jar file is generated out of that Spring Boot application? Sir, you are copying jar file, but why you are saying expose 8080? Because it's a standalone application, right? You may think, sir, you are copying jar file, but why you are saying expose 8080? Because does this jar file will have a embedded Tomcat? Yes. So if I run like this, does it mean my application will be up and running in the Tomcat, which is embedded as part of the jar file itself? Yes. So that's why I'm using Java as a base, but I'm not using Tomcat as a base. Suppose normal application that is not developed using a Spring Boot, let's say normal standalone. You might have already used this Maven standalone application, right? This is a standalone. One second. If you see this one, they are not using any Spring Boot frameworks like this. They are using normal. This is not used with any Spring Boot frameworks. They have not developed. This is normal standalone application. If I generate a jar file out of this project, if I execute java-jar, does any application, any web application will be running? No, it's normal standalone. So that is the power of Spring Boot. Now Spring Boot is widely used in the development area. If you are from a Java development background, anyone from Java background, they might have already using Spring Boot for developing lot of applications. Spring is different, Spring Boot is different. That is development concept. So this application is developed using Spring Boot. This application is developed using Spring Boot framework. If I want to run this application also as a container, I don't want to run this application in a normal virtual machine. If required, can I run this application also as a container by creating an image for this application with required softwares, with required code and configurations? Yes, something like this. Now let me show you. Let me show you. Let me show you. Let me connect to my build server. Let me connect to my build server where I will build the image. First, let me clone that project. I'm cloning this project. Let me go inside. I think I am not in a build server. I think I am in a deployment server. I don't want to build here. So let me connect to my build server. Let me connect to my build server. I don't want to build there. Nothing will stop me to build there. If required, I can build in that server also by installing required build softwares. But I want to follow the process. So you are deploying some applications in the server. Are you going to build the application in the same server? That application packages or Docker packages? No. So I want to follow some practice. So I'm not doing there. Let me build in this different server. Let me build in from this server. Now let me clone that project here. Guys, whatever I am doing manually using Jenkins, can I implement continuous integration, continuous deployment? Whatever I am doing manually using Jenkins, can I do the continuous integration and continuous deployment for this application if required? Yes. But I am trying to do manually. Git clone, git clone. Now I clone this project. I clone this project. Let me go inside that project. Now I have my application code. I also have a Docker file. Now this is my Docker file. Since it's a Java based application, first do I need to build a package for my Java by compiling the Java code? Do I need to create a Java packages? Yes. But if it is a Node.js application or Python applications or AngularJS, React.js, can I copy that source code as is and run that application? If it is a scripting based languages like Python, Node.js, React.js, AngularJS, these type of scripting languages, can I copy that source code as is and run that source code without compilation also? Yes. Those are scripting languages. But this one is a Java based, compiler based application, compiler based programmatic language. So do I need to compile my source code and create a package to run that application first? Yes. Now I need this package first. If I directly execute a Docker build, do I have this package in my build context? Something like this I am doing. Something like this I am doing. Something like this I am doing. This dot indicates build context. So if I do like this, it is trying to use this as a base image. It is pulling that base image. On top of that base image, using run instruction, I am doing something. If you see, is my image creation is successful? Guys, whenever you are getting any error, any error, first read that error, read that message. Don't blindly, sir, I am getting error. What is the why? First read the error. If you read this error, will you be able to understand at least 50%? At least 50%. What it is saying? What it is saying? Copy failed, file not found in the build context. File not found in the build context are excluded by Docker ignore. What is this Docker ignore? I'll explain in some time. But what they are saying, file not found in the build context, which means is this file is part of build context. So what is your build context? While building the image, what you have given? What is your build context? Dot. Does dot indicates correct directory? Now when I execute ls, in the current directory, first of all, can I see this folder itself? Forget about this file. First of all, do I have this folder itself? No. So do I need to have this file? I'm just giving this as a file. Any file which you are trying to copy, does that file should be part of your build context? That can be XML file, that can be YML file, that can be jar file, var file, that can be any file which you are trying to copy should be part of the build context. Now I don't have. Can I execute this command to create that package? Maven concept. Since I am doing in the server directly, do I need to have a Java software, Maven software installed in this server because I'm executing this MVN clean package in the server? So do I need to have these softwares installed in this server to create that package in the build server? Because I am building in the server. So I already have Maven installed. If you remember, did I install Maven when I started this Docker? Yes. So it is building that application package. Now I am going to get an application package. Once that application package is created, can I build another package that is Docker package, Docker image, where I will have a required softwares plus my application code and whatever other configurations or environments required to run that application. That is what we are doing using Docker. Since I am building for the first time, it is downloading all the Maven dependencies from central repository to the local repository. I hope you know already what is local, what is central, what is Nexus, hosted, Nexus proxy, Nexus group. So it will take some time. So the package is going to be created. That package. Now, once that package is available, I can create a Docker image for that package. As I already told, if I don't want to run this application as a container, I don't want to do the container deployment. If required, can I do this application in a virtualized deployment? Which means, can I take one virtual machine? Where can I install Java software in that virtual machine? Can I copy this jar file and execute Java-jar in that virtual machine? If required, I can take one virtual machine. I can install Java in that virtual machine. I will copy this jar file to that virtual machine. Can I execute Java-jar, that jar file name in that virtual machine so that application will be directly running in a virtual machine? Yes. But instead of doing that, can I run it as a container also by creating a Docker package with the required software like Java, copying that application code to the image like this, like this. Now, with the help of this Docker file, I am creating a image package. Does that package will have my application code because of this line? Because of this line, Does that image will have my application code? And also, will it have a required softwares because of this line? And if you want to do any other configurations, can I use this run instruction to do any other configurations in the image? If required, can I set environment variables, whatever is required for that application to be run using this env? Suppose I have some other configuration files like XML files, YML files, or property files. Can I again copy those files also if required using copy instruction again? If I have some other files to be copied? Yes. So with the help of this Docker file, can I create a Docker image with required softwares and libraries and application configurations for that application? Yes. And because of this line, does my application will be started when I start the container? So does that image, does this command work, Java command work because of this one? Are we having a Java software because of this one? Yes. And do I have this one also? Do I have this one also because of this line? Yes. So I am going to create an image like this. Now. Now I have this file as part of the build context. Now, is it going to copy to the image? Does that copy will copy the file to the image now? Is my image is created successfully? Now, let me push the image. Now, can I push this image to any registry? That can be ECR, that can be Nexus, that can be JFrog, whatever it is. For now, I tagged with Docker Hub registry. So I am pushing like this. Since I already authenticated Docker login, I have done earlier. So is it able to push the image now? Because I have done the Docker login earlier from this system. Now that image will go and sit in the registry. Now, if required, any server, that can be your dev server or production server or QA server, will be able to run that Docker image as a container in your server? Yes, you can do that if that image is available in the registry. Now, when I go to the registry now, this is my registry. Will I able to see that image pushed to that registry? This one, few seconds ago, I pushed that image, this one. Now, in the other server, can I create a container? Docker run -d -name, that Spring app -p port forwarding, port mapping. Since I used expose keyword in the Docker file, if I inspect the image also, will I able to know what is my container port and which port my container will be running? Yes. Now, host port. If some container is using, say, this host port already, can I map this host port with this container if this is already used for any other container or any other process? Not only container, any other process is already used this port in that server. Will I able to use this port? No. So what command I can use to see what ports are being used or what ports are being listening already in the server? In that server, we can use netstat. Now, is this port is used for any container as of now? If you see, one container is mapped with 7070. But for this container, did we done the port mapping itself? We have not done the port mapping for this container. So can I do like this now? 8080 with 8080 for this application? Yes. Docker hands-on, that Spring what name I have used? Spring boot Mongo. I need to give the correct tag also. Mongo colon 1. Now, while creating this image with the help of Docker file, in my Docker file, do I have a CMD instruction? In the Docker file, do I have a CMD instruction like this? For that application, do I have a CMD instruction like this? Which means when I do this, when I when I do this, is it going to create and start the container? Which means while starting the container, does this command will be executed? With me, that means does your application will be started within the container? Yes. Now let me do that. This image is not there locally in the deployment server. Is it pulling from the registry, that repository? Now if I execute docker ps, can I see that container running? And how come this is the command which got executed while starting the container? How come this is the command which got executed? Because of CMD. Now docker ps. Now localhost, locally from the server directly, localhost and my host port 8080. Application is directly running on the root context. Now can I see 200 response on that application? Localhost, your server, your host port and application is running on the root context itself. Am I able to see 200 response with some response? Now if I try to use, I observe a lot of people are doing lot of mistakes, but I thought of explaining now. Now if I take that local host in this browser, if I do like this, will I get a response? Now what is the meaning of local host? Now your server, current server. Now this is, I am using my local laptop. Is anything running on my local laptop on 8080? But how come it is working here when I say local host? Because in this application, in this server, local host is there. I mean to say current server on 8080. Is my container is mapped with 8080, host port 8080? Is request is going to that port 80 in that machine? Does Docker is forwarding the traffic to the container, whatever container is mapped with that host port? Yes. People are saying lot of mistakes I observe. They are doing something in one machine. They are trying to refer local host in another machine. That won't work, guys. Now from outside, if I want to access, can I use that public IP of that server? Can I use that public IP of that server from outside, from internet? The public IP of that server? Whatever host port I mapped. What is the host port I mapped? 8080. So am I getting a response from that application? But actually, it's a three-tier application, which means this application is going to connect to the database also. This application is going to connect to the database and this data will be persisted in the database. But did I configure any database as of now? No. This application is trying to connect to the database and it will insert this data into database. I have not configured any database. I have not passed database details also to my application. That's why, can I already see? Am I already see some exceptions or errors here? Because this is trying to connect to the database. I have not passed my database details also. I already have some exceptions. If I try to click on the submit button also, will I get some errors like internal 500 errors because application is connecting to the database, database is not there. Now, if I see the logs of that container, again, if I see the logs of that container, I see some errors, exceptions. Because I have not at all passed where is my database, what is the IP address of my database. I have not passed all those details. That we will see later. That we will see later. But are you guys clear how to Dockerize these type of applications also? Suppose if I have another Spring Boot application, can I run that Spring Boot application also in this machine, but a different host port? Can I use again same host port? Again, same host port. I already used this 8080 for this application. For this host port, I already used it for this application. Can I create another container on same host port? No. If required, can I create a one more Spring Boot application container on a different host port? Can I map? Container port can be same. Container port can be same. Host port can be unique. This we already discussed. I no need to explain again and again. As I already told, what should be unique when you are creating a containers? Host port. Okay. Now, this is one application. Similarly, if required, can I Dockerize any application? Is Docker can be used only for Java-based applications? No. Docker can be used for any application. That can be Python, Node.js, React.js, Angular, whatever it is. Now, if you see, I have one Python-based application also. I have one Python-based application also here. Very simple Python-based application. I have one Python-based application. So the developers has developed one application using Python programmatic language. They have used Python, some frameworks, Python frameworks. The way we have a Spring Boot for Java, similarly, do we have a different frameworks to develop different programmatic languages? The way we have a Spring Boot for Java, similarly, Python has its own frameworks like Django, Flask, all those things. Similarly, Node.js also. Node.js is one programmatic language. Do we have some libraries in Node.js also, like Express.js? There are a lot of libraries. So that is developers. Developers will use all those things to develop the application. So this Python application is developed by some developers. Consider this Python application is developed by some developers. They are using some frameworks like this Flask framework. Using that Flask framework, they are developing some APIs. There are two types of applications, guys. One is web applications. Another one is APIs. What is difference between web application and APIs or REST APIs nowadays? What is the difference between web applications and REST APIs? Web applications is basically UI, GUI, graphical user interface. Does this graphical user interface, this GUI front end, in the background from this web applications, can we make API calls? Can we make API calls that can be REST API where you have your actual logic? What is stands for API? What stands for API? API stands for what? Application Programming Interface. So from this web application, can we make calls? Can we make API calls to the REST APIs? That API can be in same application, which means UI, basically this is front end. API is nothing but middleware. Three-tier applications. Did I explain what is three-tier architecture as of now? I think no. If I am not wrong, I think I have not explained three-tier architecture. So what is three-tier architecture? If you are from a development background, sometimes as a DevOps engineer also you need to understand what is the meaning of three-tier. What are the three-tier architecture? Presentation layer. Anyone has already what is this three-tier? You are from development background. You can understand what are the three tiers when it comes to applications. Sometimes they'll ask what is three-tier architecture also, or entire architecture, all are same. So three-tier architecture, when it comes to three-tier architecture, these three are made of three layers. One is presentation layer, another one is application layer, another one is data layer. Data layer, or we call it as a database layer. So what is presentation layer? What is the meaning of presentation layer? It's a front end. Front end. Whatever we see in the UI. UI. So let's take this application. This is also an application, guys. This AWS website is also an application. So can I call this as a presentation layer? Whatever I see here, can I call this as a presentation layer? What is presented to the customers? Now this Flipkart application. This Flipkart application. Can I call this as a presentation layer? What we see here, what is presented to the users, customers of that application. This is presentation layer, front end or GUI. So these presentation layers can be developed using what type of tools or technologies? HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React.js, AngularJS, etc. There are a lot of presentation. And the JSP, Java script pages. I mean to say, this is Java scripting pages. The JSP is also kind of a presentation layer. And jQuery other things. This is presentation layer. So what is the meaning of application layer? Suppose I am clicking something. I am clicking on something here. Let's say I am clicking on login and I am providing some details here. The moment we click on some button here, does this presentation layer will communicate with application layer? Will it make a call to the application layer where in the application layer is this data will be validated? Is this data will be processed and validated in the application layer? Suppose I am clicking on some button here. So I am giving my phone number, 99 something like this. I am giving my phone number and my password. So many phone number 9898. I don't remember, something like this. I am giving that phone number. So if I give like this, I am giving my password. The moment I click on submit button or any button, does the request goes to the application layer, which means does presentation layer will communicate with application layer? Now let me show you. I am using some browser tools here. Let me show you 1 second. One second. Now, if you see, the moment I click on something like this here, 1 second. I want to change this placement. Each browser has its own location. Okay, let me keep here in the bottom. Okay, yeah, I got now. I think I clicked on mobile. Let me disable this. Now, suppose if you see here, we are clicking on something here. Let me go to the network section. Let me close all these other things, unnecessary things. Now I am giving some details here, just to give an example. Now the moment we click on submit here, if you see, is it making some call in the background? Is it making some call in the background? If you see, is request is going to some APIs, some code. If you see, when I click on this submit button, it is making some call, which means is this presentation layer is communicating with application layer. So what exactly in the application layer it is going to happen? In that application layer, whatever we are giving in the presentation layer, is the data will be processed, validated based on your requirement. It will process, it will validate, it will save also. So this is APIs. This is APIs, application programming interface. Now this application layers can be developed using what type of programmatic languages? Can I use Java? Can I use Python? Can I use Node.js also? Node.js also can be used to develop the APIs. And can I use Ruby, Ruby and Rails? I can use .NET also. I can use PHP also. I can use nowadays one programmatic language is there called Go. What is this Go? Go language. So can I use these type of languages to develop this application layer where we can do something? We will read that code and process something. Yes. And what is this database layer or data layer? What is this database layer or data layer? Databases. What do we do with the databases? For what purpose we will use database? What purpose we are going to use these databases, or what is this database layer? Databases are used to store and retrieve data. So suppose this application layer, this presentation layer is making a call to the application layer. Does this application layer will validate whether this customer is part of that application database, whether this user is part of the database, that application database? Does each application will have its own databases where we will store that data of that application? Suppose this is one application, Flipkart is one application. Does Flipkart will use some databases to store customer data, products data, orders data, payments data, customers data, orders data, payments data, and also inventory in this sense, how many products are there, each product has how many stocks, vendors data, all these data. Will they maintain all this data in the some databases? used to store and retrieve the data of that application. So what are the popular databases? Again, we have again here SQL, NoSQL. There are again two types of databases now: SQL based databases, NoSQL databases. So what is the popular SQL based databases? MySQL, Oracle, what else? IBM DB2, PostgreSQL, PostgreSQL. These are kind of a databases. When it comes to NoSQL, we call it as a document oriented databases. Document oriented databases. So this is RDBMS, relational databases, which means we have database, primary keys, foreign keys, all those things like relational databases. When it comes to NoSQL, the data will be stored as in a JSON format, in the JSON format, document oriented databases. Nowadays, widely used databases are NoSQL databases only, guys. Everyone is developing APIs, REST APIs. They are using NoSQL based databases. Recently, when the microservices came into picture, NoSQL databases are widely used. What are the popular NoSQL databases? MongoDB and Couchbase, Cassandra. If I am going for the cloud, cloud like AWS or Azure, do we have services available for this SQL based databases as well as NoSQL based databases also? Yes. So if I am going for a cloud, instead of you set up the database on your own, can we ask AWS to manage the database for us, create and manage? So what is the service available for that? What is the service available for that? RDS. When I go to RDS, we have different types of things here. So instead of you set up a server, instead of you create a virtual machine, instead of you are installing this MySQL software, can I directly leverage database as a service in the cloud so that they will create and they will maintain the database for us? So will it eliminate administration effort, maintenance effort from the people? It will eliminate administration and maintenance effort. So instead of you manage, you maintain database, let AWS maintain. So that is RDS. If you see, I can create a database, RDS databases. Here, when I am creating RDS database, in the background, who is going to create the databases for you, the instances for databases and all those things? In the background, AWS. So can I create something like this? Aurora database, MySQL database, MariaDB, Microsoft SQL Server, Postgres server, like this also. Instead of you create a server and do that, you can use this one also. So this is database. So can we use these applications will be used databases? Any application you take that will have a databases. So does this application layer will read and write the data from this database layer? It will read, write, it will validate, update, delete, all these things will be happen here. So is everyone clear what is three-tier architecture? Like if this is the application, there are a lot of things in the background. So this is presentation layer. This presentation layer will interact with application layer like this. This application layer is going to interact with the databases to validate the data, read and write the data. Now this is also whatever application I just now deployed, is it a typical three-tier application? So whatever I see here, is this, can I call this as a presentation layer? The moment I am doing something here, is it interacting with the application layer? Now, the moment I am clicking on submit, if you see, is it making some call to some application here? Request is going to this server on this port. This is my application API. So is this API is trying to talk to the database and insert this data? Yes. But now, since the database is not there, is my application layer is able to talk to the database layer? Database itself is not there. That's why am I getting some errors like this? 500 error. What 500 indicates? What 500 indicates? Internal server error. Internal server error. So this is three-tier architecture. Now, if required, can I deploy this presentation layer and application layers also as a containers? Instead of directly deploying in the servers, instead of directly deploying this presentation layer or application layer code, can I run this as a containers also if required? Now, as of now, this is in same code base. As of now, this is in same code base, which means whatever Docker image I created, within that image, do I have a presentation layer and application layer code both in the same code? Yes. If you see, this is my code base. So here, do I have some presentation layer code like HTML? Using this HTML, I developed presentation layer. So am I able to see whatever is part of this application, this HTML? That is what I am seeing here. So this is part of this code. Am I able to see all these things in my presentation layer? Spring Boot MongoDB demo. The input fields, right? I am expecting some input field. First name I am expecting as a input box. So can I see that input box, that first name, that input box, last name input box, email input box, like this? I can see all that code here. Now there is a button. Type is submit. The moment they click on the submit button, it is going to make some call. To this form. Save. So can I call this as a API? The moment I click on the submit button, is it going to make a call to this API, this code? And is it also part of same code base? That application layer? If I go to the Java classes here, so do I have that API? Post call? So is it going to receive that request, whatever has been sent in the presentation layer, that first name, last name, email, is it taking that here as an input? And am I using that input to talk to the database layer? I'm making one more as a developer. I am making one more method here. That method is going to talk to the database and insert the data. So can I call this as a typical three-tier application? Now, this presentation layer and application layer is up and running, but do I have a database layer configured and running as of now? This DB? No. So that's why, am I getting errors? When I'm trying to submit this one? Yes. So this is typical three-tier architecture. If required, can I have this as a separate also? UI running in separate process, APIs running in a separate process? Is this also possible? Yes. This is also possible. You can have your UI code as a separate project. You can have application API code as a separate project also. That is also possible. Okay. But UI is nothing but what? That front end or GUI, we call it as a presentation layer and application layer. Guys, one more important, nowadays we will have a mobile based apps also, mobile applications or desktop applications or web applications. We call it as a desktop or web applications. Now, suppose desktop applications or web applications, I can develop using these programmatic languages. For mobile apps, whatever you are installing in mobile, people are using Android, or if it is iPhone, iOS. So does these mobile applications can be developed using Android or iOS? So is this mobile applications, whatever applications you installed in your mobile, is it going to make calls to the API application layers which is running in somewhere else? You installed application, mobile application in your mobile, that is just a presentation layer. The moment you click on some button, is it making API calls? Is your mobile application is interacting with the APIs which is running somewhere else in their data center or cloud? So that way, can I reuse my APIs? If can I reuse my APIs for web applications or mobile based applications also? Same APIs, I can interact from mobile applications or I can interact from web application also. Is everyone clear? This is very, very important, guys. If you know these applications very well, will you able to understand the DevOps and will you able to understand what is database, what is application, how to automate any task? That's why I'm covering all these things here so that you can easily understand. It is nothing to do with the DevOps or Docker, but if you know what is this, you can easily understand what is what. And also sometimes in the interview, what is happening, let me tell you. One of our student recently, attended one interview. He cleared technical round. First round he cleared. Second round, one of the manager asked, right? So what databases you are familiar? Did you familiar with any database? You know what that student told? I worked on Java based applications. I know Java, I know Python, but I don't know. He said database as this one. Basically, he said I know Java, I know Python. But interviewer was asking, are you familiar with any databases? He said I am familiar with Java and Python. Is that correct answer, guys? Interviewer asking which databases you are familiar or which databases at least you know. But this guy was started saying, I know Java, I know Python, something like this. I know Node.js. So interviewer said, okay. That manager said, okay, we will get back to you. You know the end result. They never get back to that guy. So database is different, application is different, presentation is different. Now, can you understand what is the technology stack in the databases, applications stack, presentation stack? So answer should be, if they are asking any database, you can say maybe MySQL, Oracle, Postgres, Mongo, or Couchbase like this. But at high level, they may ask what is SQL based, what is no SQL based. But as a DevOps engineer, do you need to be expert in the database? Are you going to do the administration in database? Are you going to write a queries in the database? Are you going to write a procedures in the database? No. But you should be familiar. At least what is database, how to install database, how to take a backup of database. As a DevOps engineer, you should know. But are you going to do complete, database queries development, procedures development, all those things? No. For that, there is a different JD. There is a different JD. There is a different people. DBA. What is this DBA? What these guys will do? Database administrators. But as a DevOps engineer, even though you are not working on Java, even though you are not working on Python, Node.js, at least you should know what is Java, why Java, how to install Java. If it is a Java application, how to deploy Java application, how to deploy Node.js application. Even though you are not a database admin, as a DevOps engineer, at least do you need to have an idea what is MySQL if required, how to install MySQL, how to take a backup of database. But as a DevOps engineer, will you able to interact with the developers to understand what is what? Also, as a DevOps engineer, if required, can you interact with the database administrators also if you don't know something in the database in detail? Yes. But the knowledge is required. The knowledge is required. What is what? That's why I'm explaining this one also in the classes, but people are still going like a by hearting. They are not focusing on what I am teaching. They want to execute some command and see the output. They are saying, okay, I learned. That is not correct, guys. Concepts are important. They're only focusing, I'm sharing a running notes or I'm sharing some notes. They're saying, okay, Balaji sir has executed this command. Let me execute this command. Next, he has executed some command. Let me execute another command. Don't learn that way. Understand the concept. Then you can apply whatever concept is required as per your requirement. What knowledge we need in RDS for a DevOps role? They may expect you to create a RDS as a DevOps engineer also. They may expect you to create RDS instances like this that can be manually you can do, or as a Terraform. If you don't want to manually create any resource from the console, they will expect you to create an infrastructure using Terraform if you are part of that infrastructure team. So how to create database instances in RDS, how to take the snapshot of these RDS instances, that is expected. Okay, guys, let's continue. I thought of explaining these things also because if you know the architecture, if you know the application well, you can manage the DevOps for that application very well. Now, this application also typical three-tier application. This application also typical three-tier application, same as this one. But only the difference is this you call it as a real-time application. You guys calling this as a sample application. But is there any difference between whatever I am demonstrating here and whatever this is hosted here? No difference. But only thing is functionalities. Functionalities. Is this application is developed as per the requirements of that Flipkart? As per the requirements of Flipkart, this application is being developed. This is my requirement. So only the lot of code will be there, lot of functionalities will be there in the actual applications. That is the only difference case. Now let's continue with one more application. I was about to demonstrate this application, this Python application. So I have a Python code. If required, can I run this Python application also directly in the server by installing Python, by copying this Python code to that server, by executing Python command? I can do that. Otherwise, can I run this Python application also as a container by creating an image? Yes. So now, if you see, there is a Docker file for this application. What I am trying to do here using this Docker file? I am pulling the Python base image. So am I going to get a Python software from this base image? And with this, what is happening is that directory will be created in the image and switch to the directory. And this copy dot dot. What is this copy dot dot does? Is it going to copy all the files, all the folders which is part of the build context to the current working directory of the image? Yes. Now, since it's a Python code, we are copying as is, which means is this Python class, is this Python class is also going to be copied along with other files. All these files will it be copied to that image? Yes. Then this run command. What this run command does? I am executing something like this pip install. What is this pip? What is this pip install? What it does actually? For Java based applications, you are using Maven for managing the dependencies. So when you execute Maven install, is it going to download the Maven dependencies, whatever you have defined in the pom.xml? Yes. Similarly for Node.js, you are executing npm install. What is that npm? It's a dependency management tool for Node.js application. So whatever dependencies you have defined in the package.json, whatever dependencies, Node.js dependencies you have defined in the package.json file, is it going to download all those dependencies if you execute npm install? Yes. Similarly, what is this pip? What is this pip? Pip is a Python package manager. Pip is a Python package manager. So when I execute this pip install, is it going to download Python dependencies, whatever I have defined in this file? In the Python, you can define the dependencies, some file like this, requirements.txt file. So Flask is one Python library. This is also one Python library. So is this Python libraries or dependencies will be downloaded when we execute that pip install with that file, some file like this. So when I am executing this one using run itself, using run I am executing this one, which means while creating an image, do I have a Python software and my application code, Python code, and also the Python dependencies used for that application? Will it be part of my image because of this line? Yes. So what is this expose? What is this expose? That Python application is going to run on 5000 port. I am saying that is the port. But where they have done, they have hard coded somewhere in your Python code, or that is the default one. They have hard coded somewhere in the Python code. Let me show. In this Python code, maybe they have hard coded somewhere, or that is the default one. Maybe that is the default port of that Flask. So that is what is defined. Now, whenever I start the container, do I need to start that application? So am I using that commands? These commands will start that application using CMD. I am running that Flask application. So that is development related stuff. So here I have given which Python class to be executed when I start that Flask command I have used. So this Python script will be started when I run that command while starting the container. While starting the container, I am using Python 3 Flask run. I am using Python 3 Flask run, but in the Flask file, one file is there in the flask.env. I have mentioned what Python code has to be run. So with this command, does Python application will be started? That application will be started while creating a container? Yes. So let me build this application. Let me build this application. Let me build this application. Let me clone that code. But do I need to install any Python related software in my build server? Because I'm not doing anything in the build server. Do I need to install any Python software or Flask software in my build server? Because I'm not doing anything in the build server for that application, because everything I'm doing in the Docker file itself. Everything I'm doing in the Docker file itself, which means this Docker file, I'm copying the code as is because it's a scripting language. So can I directly execute Docker build now here? Something like this: Docker build, Docker hands-on / Python hyphen Flask hyphen app, something like this. One. Now I have a Docker file in the email, in that folder. So it is building that image. Am I getting Python software and pip software from this base image? That Python software and pip software from this base image? Yes. Because of this line, is my code is copied to that image? Is that code is copied to that image, whatever is part of your build context? Then we are executing pip install. Is this file is also part of your image? Is this file is also part of your image because we copied everything? So this pip install is downloading required dependencies. Then image is successfully created. This is warning. This is warning. You can ignore that. Now, image is created successfully. Now this image, does that image have Python software along with my application code with the Python dependencies for that application? Now wherever I create a container, by pushing that image, wherever I create a container, does that container will have my Python application up and running, that Python process up and running? Do I need to install any Python software in deployment server where I want to deploy if I want to run this as a container? Not required. Now here I already have a lot of containers, guys. If I keep creating a containers, will you encounter issues with the server? Because this is very less capacity, 1 GB RAM and 1 core processor. As I already told, your server doesn't have enough resources. Will I able to create n number of containers because my server doesn't have enough resources? No. So that's why I'll delete old containers and I'll demonstrate. But in real time, are you going to delete other applications to deploy your application? Since Balaji sir is doing this one before deploying any application, if you blindly follow that, since Balaji sir is executing this command before deleting any new application, deploying new application, let me also do this. If you do this, will it impact other applications? Yes. So in real time, are you going to do like this? No, guys. In real time, you will have enough servers. You will have enough servers with enough capacity. If you don't have enough capacity, will you request to add additional resources like CPU or memory or some additional servers also? Yes. Don't do like this. Now, let me create a container, that Python application. Docker run -d -name Python app -p. This is running. I can do something like this also. That image name, this image name. I am doing something like this. If this image is not available locally, is it pulling that image from that repository to create a container? If you understand Docker, Docker is improving the build and deployment time? The frequency of releases can be improved using Docker. Does Docker will eliminate compatibility issues? Works in one server, doesn't work in another server. We can eliminate that compatibility issues, right? Using Docker, I can improve the frequency of releases, quality of releases, reliability in the sense consistent. Now this application is running. If I want to test locally, can I use something like this local host on that host port? Now something is running on the root itself, something is running. Am I getting a response saying that app works because that Python code has something running on the root context? So if you see, this is root API, root context. Am I getting this response when I'm testing something on the root context? Am I getting that response app works? And this is REST API. This is REST API. One more is there, slash API slash task. This is a get call. Am I getting a response from that REST API in the JSON format REST API? Yes. Like this, it has some APIs. Getting the data, persisting the data, deleting the data. Like this, there are some APIs. Can these APIs can be used in any UI presentation layer? They want to save some data. Can they make this API call, post call to save that data? Can they make API call to delete some data from presentation layer from UI? Can they make the APIs? Any developer from presentation? Yes. No, but this is not using any database. This is not using any database. Just it is storing in memory. Within the memory, it is storing. Now, if I want to access this application outside, can I use that server wherever I have deployed that public IP of that server like this? And on which port I have hosted that host port? 5000. Now, why I am not getting any response? It is saying pending. Is it anything to do with now Docker? No, it's a issue with firewall. I need to open the firewall. Even after opening the firewall, if you are not able to reach, is it something to do with network and routes? Is it something to do with network and routes? Yes, because it is working locally, but from outside systems, it is not able to reach. So that is maybe because of network issues, routes issues, or firewall issues. Now I have opened everything. Am I getting a response now? If you see, when I am accessing that one, am I getting a 200 response? Am I getting a 200 response? You can see the response code also. You can see the response code also like this. So I am getting 200 status code. Am I getting this response? I can see here itself. Now, if I am doing some other API calls like this, again, am I getting 200 response with this response back? I can see here itself. Yes. So this way, can I run any application as a container? Yes. So I will continue few more things. I want to cover multi-stage Docker file, but today I spend most of the time explaining this one, which is not I thought. So that's why it took some time. So multi-stage I will continue in the next class. What is multi-stage Docker file? I'll continue in the next class. Assignment for the week. Assignment for the week is create custom Jenkins image using Docker file, which means I want you to create a image. That image should have, I want you to create a image. That image should have a Java software. That image should have a Jenkins software. Jenkins software. Okay. When I create a container, when I do that like this, when I do something like this with your image, whatever image you guys are creating, when I do something like this, I should be able to access Jenkins. Jenkins should be up and running. I want you to do this. I want you to create an image. That image should have a Java plus Jenkins software. The moment I do like this on your image, I should be able to access Jenkins homepage up and running. But before wrapping up the session, don't try like these type of comments, because I know that you are already going to do that one. So don't try like this. What is the meaning of like this? So don't do like this. Apt install Jenkins, rm install Jenkins. Don't do like this. Why I am saying you do like this, but in your Docker file you give some comments like this: service start Jenkins or systemctl start Jenkins. Do you think will it work in the container if you do like this? You give something like this as a CMD. Do you think will it work in the container? So I know what is your plan. What you do, you will take some Ubuntu image or CentOS image. Maybe you will take some Ubuntu image or CentOS image as a base. You install Java. You install Java like this. Java fine. You can execute apt install that whatever Java you want to install. If you execute apt install Jenkins, it will install Jenkins also. But does these commands will work? Service command will not work. Systemctl commands will not work, because this is not a complete operating system. This is not a complete operating system. Do you have all the libraries like systemctl, service, all those things part of your image? No. So instead of doing this, will you guys download the var file, like using this var file link? Using this var file link, will you able to download and run this command like this in your container? Download the var file. You can download the var file. Maybe this one. You can copy this link address. You can copy this link address. I am only giving the solution. Can you use this in your Docker file? Maybe you can use add command, or you can use run with wget or run with curl. Download this var file. Then CMD, can you give something like this? Whatever they said, like can I do something like this as a CMD or as entry point? I want you to do this assignment. And also, I don't want to run that Jenkins process as a root user. I want you to create a normal user, user, Jenkins group. I want to start that Jenkins process as a Jenkins user. So this way, if you do the assignment, will you able to understand all the instructions in Docker file? What is from, what is run, what is CMD, what is workday, what is env? Assignments we are not giving for punishment. Assignments are not punishments. If you do the assignments, will you able to build the confidence? Not only just exploring the confidence also very important. If you do the assignments, your confidence levels will increase. Not only just exploring, your confidence levels also will increase if you do lot of assignments. So in the interview, if they ask any question, will you able to explain? Because you have already done lot of assignments, lot of practice. So that's why we are giving assignments, not as a punishment. Guys, all our efforts will be wasted if you don't do the assignments and practice. What as a trainer, I am putting lot of effort to teach all these topics in and out. But all this will be wasted if you don't do assignments or if you don't practice. That is of no use, whatever I say here. Because If you do the assignments, you can remember for so many days. If you just attend the class, after 10 days, if I come and ask you, what is CMD, what is entry point, do you think will you be able to remember if you don't do the assignments and practice? No. So that's why we are giving assignments. Make sure you are doing the assignments. Not only in this tool, any tool from day one, Linux also we have given assignments, Sonar Cube also we have given assignments, Jenkins also we have given, AWS also we have given. If you have done all those assignments, you can already clear what is what. So try to do these assignments. I want you to push the image to your registry. You give me the registry details. Suppose you have pushed to your registry. This is my registry, right? You might have pushed something like this. Just to give an example, something like this you might have pushed. I want you to share this registry with me. I'll just run like this. And when I access on this host port, wherever I created that container, I should be able to access my Jenkins homepage. But before you share with me, you run first. You deploy that image as a container and see whether that application is started, that Jenkins is started, whether you are able to access Jenkins or not. First test yourself, then give the image to me. Okay. Thank you guys. I'll continue on Monday. This is the assignment for the week. Thank you. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.